Swine production has changed dramatically during the last decade. Hot-deck nurseries, concrete all-in, all-out production facilities, and total confinement operations are just a few of these changes.
While modern hogs are being developed to adapt to these new environments, internal parasites are also adapting for survival within the swine industry's management systems.
Even with the widespread use of dewormers, a recent survey of 1,734 swine operations across the country revealed 79% are infected. And these worm infections are costing pork producers hundreds of millions of dollars each year.
In this program, we'll look at why internal parasites are so prevalent and difficult to control. We'll discuss how to select the most effective dewormer and explain how a new scientific approach called strategic deworming can improve the health and growth of hogs, making a positive impact on the modern pork producer's bottom line.
Dr. Don Bliss is a veterinary parasitologist. For years, Don has been monitoring parasite infections on modern swine operations throughout the United States. Through his work, Dr. Bliss has spoken at length with swine producers from all over the country.
Difference in geographic region has very little importance as far as the parasites and parasite control measures. No producer is immune from the effects of parasites or the presence of parasites. And we have found that parasites can actually invade and infect any type of operation that we have seen in the swine industry today in the United States. The key thing that we see is that we can have very sanitary type operations, and we can actually go in and find that these parasites can get down into the cracks of the concrete. The egg can survive down in there, and then the pig comes along as it's going through its daily process and being bored. It'll lick the concrete floor, pick these eggs up, and keep the cycling going. We know under outside conditions, dirt conditions, some of these parasites can live 10 to 15 years in the environment. We think that as these parasites move indoors, where you have a year-round climatic control of the conditions, that these parasites may live even longer. So as we go to a confinement unit, we find that it's even more important to prevent those parasites from getting inside these facilities and maintaining a parasite-free environment.
As Dr. Bliss points out, internal parasites do not recognize geographic boundaries. Yet the type and severity of worm infections can vary from operation to operation.
The parasite problems are very dependent upon the type of operation, the type of facilities that an operation has, and also the management scheme within that operation. For a good parasite control program, each individual hog operation needs to watch the flow of their own operation, their flow of their hogs through their operation, and find out where parasites are a problem.
To help producers determine the effect worms have on their herd's performance, Herx Roussel Agrovet Company conducts ongoing parasite evaluation clinics throughout the major hog-producing states. Today, we're at a clinic being held at the Veterinary Medical Center in Worthington, Minnesota. Producers participating in the clinic submit fecal samples taken from various locations in their operation. The samples are thoroughly analyzed and tested for worms.
Identifying a parasite problem on a herd is a very difficult task. Certainly, there's slaughter checks available that many veterinarians will conduct for a producer. The problem with slaughter checks sometimes are that the veterinarian doing a slaughter check doesn't have the ability, because of the way the packing houses are, to open up the cecum and check for whipworms or possibly even check for nodule worms. I recommend that a producer have his herd checked through a fecal worm egg count at least twice a year. Obviously, one of the key problems in doing this is that this producer needs to have a lab that using a test that is sensitive. We recommend the Wisconsin or a modified Wisconsin sugar flotation technique. This technique is very sensitive in swine. In conducting parasite evaluation clinics, it's not uncommon to find producers or operations that are well managed, have good sanitary conditions, but yet still have worm problems.
It's clear to many producers that worms are a problem that demands their attention. But what isn't so clear is why worms are so tough to control.
In order to understand how hard it is to control internal parasites, we need to understand their unique characteristics. Roundworms are the most common and largest worm found in swine. They appear in up to 90% of all parasite-infected herds. Roundworms can cause serious damage. Their immature L3 larvae migrate through the liver and lungs. This harmful stage of parasitic infection causes losses in production efficiency, not to mention the secondary diseases it promotes, such as pneumonia.
But there are other worms that can cause far greater damage, many of which cannot be identified through the use of routine slaughter checks.
Up to half of all hog farms in the United States are infected with whipworms. Even a moderate level of whipworm infection results in economic losses greater than those caused by roundworms. This is due in part to the L3 tunneling larvae stage of this parasite. Found in the cecum or colon, the whipworm spends 2 to 3 weeks tunneling in the epithelial tissue before emerging as an adult. The adult worm buries its head into the tissue, feeding off of blood and other nutrients. The result is scouring pigs. It is the migration stage that makes whipworms so difficult to control.
If that whipworm larvae is in that mucosa, migrating in that mucosa, many of the dewormers cannot get to that parasite to kill it while it's in the mucosa. Therefore, many of the dewormers that are currently on the market are ineffective at that point, and we have to wait till that worm actually becomes exposed in the intestine and grows to that maturity where it can actually be contacted by the parasiticide, the dewormer, and kill this larvae.
Parasite problems don't end with roundworms and whipworms. While nodular worms are most commonly found in adult swine, heavy infection levels can cause significant losses in animals of all ages. In the southeast, kidney worms rank with roundworms and whipworms as one of the most economically significant swine parasites. Kidney worms can cause liver condemnation, poor weight gains, and unthrifty pigs. Lungworms, although restricted to dirt environments, can induce respiratory distress and inflict major damage by aggravating other respiratory diseases. Red stomach worms are common in older animals, especially when pigs are predominantly raised on dirt. And threadworms, typically isolated in the southeast, can kill baby pigs. In general, the documented cost of worm damage has a significant impact on the producer's bottom line.
When we examine the different internal parasites found in swine, the one common characteristic that makes them so difficult to control is their life cycle. Once a herd is infected, that cycle has to be broken, or it will repeat itself over and over again.
All worms share a similar life cycle. Worm eggs are picked up by hogs in contaminated facilities and hatch, becoming larvae. In the damaging L3 stage, larvae migrate throughout various organs or tissues. When larvae arrive at their preferred location within the animal, they mature into adults. Once adults, they lay their eggs that are passed in the urine or feces, continuing the cycle of new worm infections. This cycle takes 4 to 6 weeks to complete. A single worm can spread contamination throughout the entire herd. For instance, a female roundworm can lay up to 1 million eggs a day, and those eggs can remain viable for years. Therefore, there are literally billions of eggs everywhere infected pigs are or have been. As producers at the Parasite Evaluation Clinic discovered, seasonal changes have no impact on the viability of worm eggs.
We don't see much variability seasonal-wise because an interesting phenomenon goes on in hogs where if an animal has worms, those worms are laying eggs, the eggs are passing in the feces. And then those eggs are picked up by another animal, even though it's cold out and those eggs haven't developed into an infective stage. When those eggs pass through the second animal, that egg can develop into an infective stage, so the third animal now picks up that egg and becomes infected. In this way, that hog actually acts as an incubator. So you can have temperatures 20 below zero, and if that animal is picking up that egg, then while that egg is in the animal, is being incubated, it develops into an infective stage, and the next animal picks it up.
With the worm's potential to contaminate facilities, strong survivability, and damaging life cycle, it's easy to see how menacing these parasites can be. So why, with today's modern confinement facilities, sophisticated management practices, and wide variety of dewormers, are producers still suffering from the severe economic losses caused by worms?
Even though a lot of dewormers are being used in the hog industry today, unfortunately many of these dewormers are being used at the wrong time or are being used for the wrong reason. For example, we may have treatment that's being done in the nursery where there are no parasites, therefore that treatment is virtually wasted. I think the key thing that we're looking at from a parasite control program is more judicial use of these dewormers and timing our deworming around the life cycle of the parasite itself.
In some cases, producers are just unaware of the prevalence and economic damage caused by worms and do not attempt to control them. In others, it may be a poor choice of dewormer or the lack of a strategic treatment program designed with the frequency of treatments necessary to break parasite life cycles.
Let's first address the issue of proper dewormer selection. Swine parasitologists have divided the various deworming products available into two categories, Class 1 and Class 2.
Class 1 dewormers have only a limited spectrum of worm control. Most importantly, they do not control the critical L3 migrating larvae stages of roundworms and whipworms, the two most prevalent swine parasites. Furthermore, most of these dewormers require a withdrawal period. Class 1 dewormers include Atgard, Banminth, Levosol or Tramasol, Ivomec, Hygromix, and Piperazine. Each of these products falls short when it comes to controlling all of the worms that can infect swine. So, when it comes to protecting swine producers against the severe economic losses caused by parasites, Class 1 dewormers have major limitations. A Class 2 dewormer offers the broadest spectrum of worm control. The dewormers in this class control the L3 migrating larvae stages of roundworms and whipworms, are safe to use on swine of all ages, even pregnant sows, and require no withdrawal period. To date, there is only one dewormer that qualifies as a Class 2 swine dewormer. Safeguard fenbendazole. Safeguard provides the fullest spectrum of worm protection available today. Safeguard controls the L3 migrating stages of roundworms and whipworms. Safeguard is safe to use on swine of all ages, even pregnant sows. Safeguard requires no withdrawal period, is economical, and convenient to feed to hogs. And it's palatable. Hogs love it. And producers love it too. Let's talk with some producers who are using the product and get their opinions.
What would you tell other producers about the use of Safeguard?
If you haven't tried it, try it. Once you've tried it, make sure you check your results. It works.
Safeguard is a very safe product. It's a product that you can use for 3 days and be done with it. I think it's really turned a lot of things around, such as litter size. I know I've got a heavier pig at birth, and I've got a heavier pig at weaning.
We've used Tramasol before, and we used Ivomec, but we've still continued to have a few worm problems, so we thought we'd switch to Safeguard here about a year ago. We used the complete feed, and it works real easy instead of trying to set a water up when it's 20 below zero and trying to get some Tramasol into them.
We were going with Banminth, but from what we found out on our results and stuff like that, we found out that it's not doing everything that it's supposed to be doing. We went on Safeguard and we found out that the samples that we took after we dewormed with Safeguard and everything, we were on a zero basis on our worming program, which I thought was excellent. In my mind, there's no doubt that it is definitely a good product. We've seen fantastic results from it. I've seen posting results before and after using Safeguard, and it is definitely a good product, and it works.
Veterinarians like Safeguard too.
The reason we like to use Safeguard is the broad spectrum that it covers. It's a Class 2 dewormer, which means that it gets migrating stage of parasites as well. We feel that when we deworm an animal with Safeguard, that we have literally cleaned the worms out of its system until it becomes reinfected, where most other so-called Class 1 dewormers do not get the migrating stage. What has been nice about Safeguard is too that there is no slaughter withdrawal. So if you do need to worms and finishing hogs, you do not have the concern about the slaughter withdrawal.
Rex Jansen is a swine producer in Sibley, Iowa. With Dr. Wilson's help, Rex used Safeguard to solve a severe parasite problem in his herd.
I had just repopulated my herd, and I was breeding off-site on another farm, and I had put the new gilts out on dirt. And about a week after I did that, they became very sick. And one had died, and he posted it and said that it had infested with worms.
Post-mortem of the gilt revealed that there was a severe amount of liver scarring, indicating a lot of parasite migration, in specific parasite, the roundworm migration. The lungs were very spongy or non-collapsible, also indicating that there was some reaction going on to the lung, possible to parasite larvae. For this producer, we then recommended that he worm in his entire gilt pool, or new group of gilts, with Safeguard fenbendazole dewormer.
We wormed them with Safeguard, and 4 days later, they were all back to normal.
From a parasitology standpoint, fenbendazole is a very good compound, not only from the efficacy standpoint of its ability to kill mature and immature parasites of all the major parasites in swine, but also from the standpoint that it's a very safe compound. Fenbendazole also is very convenient to that producer in the fact that it is very palatable and can fit into his feeding formulation.
After selecting a Class II dewormer like Safeguard for your operation, the work has just begun. New scientific evidence reveals that producers can greatly improve the economic returns from deworming swine if they adopt a new strategic approach to deworming.
The old way of deworming involved a variable approach. Deworming treatments were given to hogs irregularly rather than at strategic times that would disrupt the worm life cycle. But new deworming programs require strategically timed treatments and are proven to be a major benefit to all swine producers who use them.
Strategic deworming is a preventive measure that uses strategically timed deworming treatments to interrupt the normal life cycles of parasites. These treatments are administered at vital times to kill adult worms and their larvae to prevent adult worms from shedding eggs and contaminating the facilities hogs inhabit.
Strategic deworming breaks the cycle of worm infection and reinfection that can be so devastating to a herd's health and growth.
With a strategic control program, what we're looking for is two things. One is that we're trying to reduce the infection that's out there, help a producer clean up the environment of his hogs, and never allow a mature worm to be present in that operation. If we can do that over time, the facility is gradually going to clean itself up, and we're going to have that operation free from the threat of parasite infection. The key economic factor that we're looking at is improved efficiency, improved feed efficiency. These parasites can disrupt feed efficiency by 6, 8, 10%.
A Safeguard strategic deworming program is simple to manage and effective at controlling worms. For farrow to finish operations, deworm sows and gilts 4 to 6 weeks after breeding and again just prior to farrowing. By breaking the parasite cycle in the sow, baby pigs will be parasite-free for at least 6 weeks. That means there's no need to deworm pigs in the nursery. The first time the pigs will be exposed to parasites is when they hit the grower floor. Deworm growing pigs at 40 to 60 pounds and finishing hogs at 90 to 110 pounds. If the hogs are raised on dirt or in heavily contaminated facilities, retreat at 150 to 170 pounds. For feeder pig producers, deworm sows and gilts 4 to 6 weeks after breeding and again just prior to farrowing. Deworm pigs at 30 to 35 pounds and sell them at 40 to 50 pounds as parasite-safe feeder pigs. And finally, feeder pig finishers should deworm pigs on arrival if the treatment history is unknown or if a Class I dewormer was previously used. Then deworm the hogs again at 90 to 110 pounds and again at 150 to 170 pounds if they are on dirt or in heavily contaminated facilities.
Because parasite control begins with the sow, farrow to finish and feeder pig producers need to remember that treatment of sows with Safeguard just prior to farrowing is an important step in the Safeguard Strategic Parasite Control Program. Breaking the parasite transmission link between the sow and her pigs is the key to successful parasite control throughout an operation.
It's also important to keep boars parasite safe. This will not only enhance their growth, but also prevent the boars from becoming a source of contamination for sows and gilts. Boars should be treated with Safeguard twice a year if held in total confinement, or every 6 to 8 weeks if they are held in a heavily contaminated environment. Once a strategic deworming program is in place, producers must continue to deworm to prevent reinfection by worms still in the environment.
Have we checked your samples? Have you had your samples monitored before?
Yeah, my biggest problem was large roundworm.
Okay, so you...
And we had a few whipworms, and then we kind of went on a worming program set up here at the clinic to try and eliminate all the worms on the place. And it looks like we're doing a pretty fair job of it.
Excellent. One of the things that I probably want to bring up here is that based on your program, it sounds like you're doing a fairly excellent strategic deworming program. Now, the fact that your samples here are clean today, one of the key things we try to tell people is don't go off your program.
No.
Because what happens is that what you've done is now is you've cleaned up the animals, but with your identification that you had some whipworms previously, some roundworms, they still can be out there either in the soil or on the concrete for 10, 12 years. And so it's going to take a while to clean them up. And so what I would do is maintain your program, maintain your monitoring every 6 months, and then at some point you might be able to fine tune it a little bit, but don't quit deworming.
For producers who use Safeguard in a strategic deworming program, the results speak for themselves.
I use Safeguard now in virtually every stage of my farrow to finish operation. It goes on a schedule, starting with the farrowing barn, top dressing Safeguard. You'll find out that Safeguard is one of the easier ones to use. It cost effective. I like the cost effectiveness of it, and then you know that you got a good broad spectrum wormer.
Is it safe?
Yeah, it's as safe as they come. I never had a problem with it.
We were using Ivomec and Atguard, but we were finding we were picking up some worms in the finishing herd. We've been doing slaughter and fecal checks in our nursery grower and finisher, and the hogs have been staying clean all the way through ever since we've been using Safeguard.
Further scientific studies also demonstrate how Safeguard improves overall health and growth in worm-infected swine, allowing hogs to grow and reproduce to their full genetic potential. For example, a Nebraska study compared sow productivity using 3 dewormers.
Sows dewormed with Safeguard produced more pork per litter at weaning than either Atguard or Ivomec, and the sows required less feed during lactation to achieve the results. This amounted to an extra $8.83 net profit per sow treated with Safeguard over non-treated sows. Deworming pigs in the growing and finishing stages of production is also important. An independent study by Kansas State University revealed that worm-infected swine dewormed with Safeguard during the grow-finish period produced an extra 43.6 pounds of pork from every ton of feed when compared to non-treated hogs. And by following the Safeguard treatment in finishing hogs with flavomycin growth promotant on out the market, producers have a profit-making advantage, especially when marketing swine at heavier slaughter weights. The bigger the hogs, the better the increase in feed efficiency and weight gain with flavomycin growth promotant.
Today, producers are very aware that when using any feed additive product, one must be concerned about safety, palatability, and convenience. As the preferred product for a strategic deworming program, Safeguard sets the standards. Safeguard is a stressless dewormer that is safe, palatable, and easy to feed.
The label is easy to follow. It says right on the label how many pounds of product to use for how many pounds of pork you're going to treat. I like that about Safeguard.
Adding Safeguard to an individual sow's feed daily for 3 consecutive days makes deworming prior to farrowing an easy job. Safeguard can be mixed into a 3 to 12 day batch of feed right on the farm or at your local feed mill, and can be fed to swine of all ages, even pregnant sows. Feed dealers typically offer Safeguard in a variety of premixes, supplements, or complete feeds that meet producers' individual requirements. There are many formulations and concentrations of Safeguard available, so remember to read and follow label directions on the product you choose. In addition to being convenient, Safeguard is very economical when compared to most dewormers, and it's safe. There is no withdrawal period required, a major consideration for any quality assurance program.
Remember, worms are prevalent, damaging overall herd health, so controlling them is worth the investment. And by using a Safeguard strategic deworming program, a herd can become parasite safe long term. Safeguard is the ideal dewormer for the modern pork producer. It offers broad spectrum efficacy, safety, convenience, economy, and bottom line profitability in worm-infected swine.
Safeguard, the dewormer that cuts the link between worms and disease for better swine profits.